Have you ever felt lost in the noise? In the endless stream of articles, videos, and gurus, all promising the secret to happiness, each one louder and more demanding than the last. There's a constant pressure to optimize, to biohack, to hustle your way to a state of perpetual bliss. But so often, these promises ring hollow. The chase leaves you feeling more exhausted than joyful, more empty than fulfilled. You might find yourself in a quiet moment, when the noise fades, asking a simple, profound question. Is this all there is? What does it truly mean to live a good life, not just a productive one or a happy-looking one, but a life that feels solid, meaningful, and true, right down to your bones? There was a man who asked these same questions. Not in our chaotic modern world, but in the quiet hills of Switzerland nearly a century ago. His name was Carl Jung. He wasn't a guru promising instant enlightenment. He was a physician of the soul, a psychiatrist who looked into the deepest, often darkest, corners of the human mind. And what he found was not a 10-step plan to happiness, but something far more valuable, a blueprint. A blueprint for building a life of substance. A life that could withstand the inevitable storms. A life that felt like a well-built home, rather than a temporary shelter. Jung was famously skeptical about the modern idea of happiness. He once wrote that the very word would be enough to make him run, because, as he saw it, life wasn't about achieving a constant state of pleasure. That, he believed, was a childish fantasy. Life is a grand, often difficult, tapestry woven with threads of both light and shadow, joy and suffering. To try and remove the threads of suffering would be to unravel the entire masterpiece. So, what was his alternative? It wasn't happiness, but wholeness. It wasn't about feeling good all the time, but about building a life that was good, through and through. Imagine for a moment that your life is not a race to a finish line called happiness, but rather the slow, deliberate act of building a house. A stone house, set by a quiet lake. This is the house of your soul, the structure that will shelter you for your entire life. What would you need to build it? You wouldn't start with the paint color or the curtains. You would start with the foundation. This is where Jung's wisdom begins, with his 5 great pillars for a good life. These are not just abstract ideas, they are the very materials you will use to build your home, stone by stone. The first pillar, the very foundation upon which everything else must be built, is what Jung called good physical and psychic health. This might sound obvious, almost too simple. But think about our metaphor. A house built on unstable, marshy ground will never be secure, no matter how beautiful its design. The same is true for your life. Jung understood, long before it became a popular hashtag, that the mind and body are inextricably linked. You cannot have a flourishing mind in a neglected body, or a vibrant body with a tormented mind. The evidence for this is now overwhelming. The longest-running study on happiness, the Harvard Study of Adult Development, has followed people for over 80 years and found that the single greatest predictor of a long, happy life wasn't wealth or fame, but taking care of your physical health. Simple things like not smoking, drinking in moderation, maintaining a healthy weight, and regular exercise were the bedrock of well-being into old age. But this isn't just about avoiding disease. It's about how your physical state shapes your entire experience of the world. When your body is in a state of chronic stress or inflammation, your mind is on high alert. The world feels more threatening. Your thoughts are more likely to spiral into anxiety. and joy feels distant. As Jung pointed out, poor mental health is an even greater source of misery than physical ailments. A 2013 study confirmed this, showing that mental health struggles cause 2 to 6 times more suffering than purely physical ones. This brings us to a common misconception Jung helps us dismantle, that healthy habits directly create happiness. It's more subtle than that. For many, healthy habits don't add a surge of joy so much as they remove the drag of unhappiness. Think of it like this. If your car's emergency brake is slightly engaged all the time, driving is a struggle. You have to press the gas harder just to move, and you can never reach your full speed. Chronic ill health, both physical and mental, is like that emergency brake. Activities like exercise work wonders because they help regulate stress hormones like cortisol, essentially releasing that brake. They quiet the internal alarm bells, creating the mental space where peace and contentment can actually grow. So the foundation isn't about being perfectly healthy. It's about tending to your body and mind with enough care that they become a stable ground for the life you want to build, rather than the source of the earthquake that threatens to bring it all down. If this idea of laying a solid, stable foundation is already sparking a new perspective for you, take a moment to subscribe to Decode Explained. We journey through these intricate landscapes of the mind together, building these structures of understanding, one insight at a time. Your journey of self-discovery is our shared purpose here. Once you have laid your foundation, what comes next? The walls. This is Jung's second pillar. Good, personal, and intimate relationships, such as those of marriage, family, and friendships. The walls of our house are what give it structure. They define its shape, provide shelter from the wind and rain, and create the sacred space within which we live. Without strong relationships, we are exposed, isolated, and adrift. We live in an age that often glorifies radical independence, the lone wolf, the self-made individual who needs no one. But this is a profound misunderstanding of human nature. We are, as neuroscientists now confirm, wired for connection. Isolation is a threat to our nervous system. It triggers the same primal fear as starvation or a predator's attack. Jung knew this intuitively. He himself was married for 52 years and understood that these bonds are not optional extras for a good life, they are the very architecture of it. Again, the Harvard study provides the clearest possible confirmation. When its current director, Robert Waldinger, was asked to summarize 80 years of research in one sentence, he said, "Good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Period." His predecessor, George Vaillant, was even more succinct. "Happiness is love. Full stop." It's not about the number of friends you have on social media or the size of your network. It's about the quality of these connections. Can you be your true self with these people? Can you call them at 3 a.m. when your world is falling apart? Do you feel seen, supported, and cherished? These are the relationships that form the sturdy walls of your inner home. They are the people who celebrate your victories without envy and sit with you in your failures without judgment. They are the mirrors who reflect back to you the best version of yourself, even when you can't see it. Building these relationships takes time and effort. It requires vulnerability, a concept the researcher Brené Brown has so powerfully explored. It means showing up, listening, forgiving, and allowing yourself to be truly known. Each act of kindness, each moment of shared laughter, each supportive conversation is like placing another stone in the wall, making it stronger, more resilient, and more beautiful. A life rich in love is a life lived in a fortress of the heart, a shelter that can weather any storm. So now, your house has a foundation and strong walls. It is secure. But a house with no windows is a prison. You need to let in the light, the air, the view of the world outside. This brings us to Jung's third pillar: the faculty for perceiving beauty in art and nature. This is about opening the windows of your soul. In our productivity-obsessed culture, beauty is often seen as a luxury, a frivolous indulgence. We have time for work, for exercise, for chores. But when do we make time to simply stand in awe of a sunset? Or to let a piece of music wash over us and transport us to another world? Jung believed this was a non-negotiable part of a life well lived. He understood that human beings have a deep, innate need for aesthetic experience. It's a form of nourishment for the soul, just as food is nourishment for the body. There's a powerful distinction to be made here between the beauty of nature and the beauty of art. Immersing yourself in nature, a walk in the forest, the sound of the ocean, the sight of a star-filled sky seems to have a universally positive effect. Studies across cultures show that exposure to natural environments reduces stress, improves mood, and increases feelings of well-being. It's as if nature reconnects us to something larger than ourselves, quieting the chattering ego and reminding us of our place in the grand scheme of things. It opens a window to tranquility. Art is a little more complex, as Jung, who was a painter himself, would have appreciated. Art doesn't always make us happy in a simple sense. A tragic play, a mournful symphony, or a somber painting can evoke feelings of sadness, grief, or unease. And yet, this experience is profoundly valuable. It connects us to the vast spectrum of human emotion. It allows us to touch the sorrow of others and, in doing so, feel less alone in our own. It expands our capacity for empathy. As a study showed, listening to happy music when you're alone can lift your mood, but listening to sad music can intensify your sadness. This isn't a flaw, it's the power of art. It meets us where we are. It validates our feelings. The true gift of art is not just pleasure, but resonance. It's the feeling of being understood across centuries and continents. To cultivate this faculty for perceiving beauty is to consciously choose to open your windows each day. It's about putting down your phone and noticing the intricate pattern of a leaf. It's about choosing to listen to an album with your full attention instead of as background noise. It's about visiting a museum and letting a single painting speak to you. It doesn't require an art history degree or a trip to an exotic national park. It just requires presence. It's the practice of looking and listening so deeply that the boundary between you and the beauty you're witnessing begins to dissolve. This is how you let the light in. Your house now has a foundation, walls, and windows. It's stable, secure, and filled with light. But a house is not yet a home until it is lived in, until it has a purpose. This is where we find Jung's fourth pillar, a reasonable standard of living and satisfactory work. This is the hearth of the home, the central place of warmth, creation, and sustenance. Let's break this down, because it touches on two of the most charged topics in our lives: money and work. And here we must dismantle another common misconception: that money buys happiness. The research on this is fascinating and often misunderstood. Older studies suggested that happiness plateaued at a fairly modest income. More recent studies show that life satisfaction can continue to increase with higher income. So which is it? The truth, as is often the case, lies in the middle. Money itself doesn't buy happiness. Acquiring more and more stuff certainly doesn't. That's a hedonic treadmill that leaves you perpetually wanting more. But money, used wisely, can be a powerful tool to facilitate a good life. It's not about buying a bigger house, but about having the resources to worry less about survival. It's about buying freedom from the constant, grinding stress of poverty, which, as Jung knew, is a profound source of misery. Beyond that, money can purchase experiences that deepen your connections with loved ones. It can buy you time to pursue things that are meaningful to you. And it can be used to support causes and people you care about, which is a proven pathway to well-being. So the goal isn't wealth for its own sake, but a reasonable standard that allows you to build your life without the constant threat of financial collapse. Then there is the matter of satisfactory work. For many people, work is a source of stress and dissatisfaction. Jung's idea here is not that everyone must have their dream job. Instead, it's about finding meaning and purpose in what you do. Researchers have identified two key drivers of meaningful work. The first is a sense of earned success. This is the feeling that you are good at what you do and that your efforts are creating value. It's the pride of a craftsman in a well-made chair, a teacher in a student's breakthrough, or a caregiver in a patient's comfort. The second driver is service to others. This is the feeling that your work, in some way, big or small, is making a positive difference in someone else's life. You can find these two elements in almost any job. A janitor isn't just cleaning floors, they are creating a safe and healthy environment for others. A software engineer isn't just writing code, they are building tools that connect people or solve problems. The key is to reframe your perspective, to connect your daily tasks to a larger purpose. When your work becomes a place where you can apply your skills and contribute to something beyond yourself, it ceases to be just a job. It becomes a vocation. It becomes the warm, glowing hearth at the center of your home, providing sustenance not just for your body, but for your soul. We have now come to the final element of our structure. We have the foundation of health, the walls of relationships, the windows of beauty, and the hearth of meaningful work. What is left? The roof. The roof is what protects the entire structure. It ties everything together and gives you a vantage point from which to see the world. This is Jung's fifth and final pillar. A philosophical or religious outlook on life. In our secular, often cynical age, this pillar can be the most challenging for many to grasp. But Jung, the son of a pastor, believed it was absolutely essential. He wasn't advocating for any single religion. In fact, he was critical of rigid dogma. What he meant was the need for a framework of meaning, a way of understanding your place in the universe, a story that helps you make sense of the inevitable suffering and joys of life. It's the ability to step back from the frantic anxieties of your day-to-day existence and see the bigger picture. He wrote, "The decisive question for a man is he related to something infinite or not? This something infinite doesn't have to be a traditional God. It could be a connection to humanity, to nature, to a set of ethical principles, or to a legacy you wish to leave behind. It's a belief in something larger than your own small ego. Without this, life can feel random, chaotic, and ultimately meaningless. When tragedy strikes and it will, a purely materialistic worldview offers little comfort or guidance. But a philosophical or spiritual outlook provides a container for your pain. It doesn't erase the suffering, but it can infuse it with meaning. It's the difference between pointless suffering and suffering that leads to growth and wisdom." Science is now catching up to Jung's intuition. Studies consistently show that religious or spiritual belief is strongly correlated with a sense of meaning in life, better mental health, and greater resilience in the face of adversity. And this isn't limited to traditional religion. Secular philosophies like Stoicism, as explored in books like Donald Robertson's Stoicism and the Art of Happiness, have been shown to significantly improve well-being by teaching people to focus on what they can control and accept what they cannot. This pillar is the roof over your head. It protects you from the existential dread of a meaningless universe. It provides shelter from the storms of fate. It is the watchtower of your house from which you can look out over the landscape of your life and see that every part of it, the successes and the failures, the joys and the sorrows, belongs to a larger, more meaningful pattern. It gives you perspective. It gives you peace. So there it is. The house is complete. The foundation of health is firm. The walls of relationships are strong. The windows of beauty are open to the light. The hearth of meaningful work is warm. And the roof of a guiding philosophy offers protection and perspective. Take a moment to stand back and look at what you have built. It is not a perfect palace. There are cracks in the mortar, the windows might get dirty, the fire might sometimes die down to embers. This is not a static achievement, it is a living home. And here lies the ultimate breakthrough, the central insight that integrates all of Jung's wisdom. A good life is not the destination, it is the house itself. It is the ongoing process of building and tending to this structure. It's about patching the roof after a storm, cleaning the windows to let the light back in, adding a new stone to the wall through a new friendship, shoring up the foundation with healthy habits. The purpose of this house is not to keep you from ever feeling pain or sadness. The rains will come, the winds will blow. The purpose of this house is to give you a place to be when they do. A place of shelter, of meaning, of love, where you can weather the storms without being destroyed by them. It is your sanctuary in a turbulent world. This vision liberates us from the frantic, impossible pursuit of constant happiness. It replaces that exhausting race with a gentle, profound, and deeply empowering task. To be the architect and builder of your own soulful home. It gives you a sense of agency, of purpose. It gives you a blueprint for a life that is not just happy, but whole. A life that is truly, deeply good. So as we leave this space of reflection, the question is not, how can I be happier? The question is much simpler and much more powerful. Look at the blueprint of your own life. Look at the 5 pillars. Which one needs your attention today? What is the next stone you can lay? Perhaps it's a simple walk in nature. Perhaps it's a phone call to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while. Perhaps it's finding a moment of gratitude for the work you do. Or perhaps it's simply sitting in silence and asking yourself what you truly believe. Do not be overwhelmed by the scale of the building. You do not have to build it all at once. You only have to lay one stone, and then another, and then another. That is how a good life is built. Not in a day, but day by day. Stone by stone.